Hello, everybody. Today we are going to be talking about a time audit and what that means. So you may have heard the term. Some people are like, what the heck is that? I have no idea. But essentially, a time audit is exactly what it sounds like. It's a review of how you're spending your time. Typically, I would say over the course of a week is probably the most obvious one that people will use, really with the goal of becoming more intentional about your time. So evaluating and just looking at your current habits. Are your current habits helping you reach your goals? Yes or no? If you're not sure, a time audit is a perfect tool to use to find that out. So I would say if this sounds like you, this might be something you'd be interested in trying, is somebody who gets to the end of their day, and I'm guilty of this, but you get to the end of the day and you think, holy crap, I've been so busy
What
all
did
day
I
long.
do?
Yeah. And you're like, and what did I accomplish?
Yeah.
And so you're looking back, and if you're not doing a time audit, over the course of the week, sometimes you don't remember. You don't even know how your time was spent. It just kind of slips through your hands.
Mhm.
And maybe you're the type that gets distracted by unimportant things, or just things that maybe are important but shouldn't be done at the time that they're being done. So honestly, we have how many people say, oh, I wish I had more time, if I only had more time.
Yeah. I need
you
more
know
time in the day.
I need more time, but chances are, if you're not being productive with your time, an extra 2 hours is just going to be 2 more hours of you spending time doing useless things, or just stressing and worrying about the fact that you have too much to do and not enough time. So no offense, but if you don't have the right habits, extra time isn't going to do squat for you.
It's true. And I always come back to that quote of like, we all have the same 24 hours in a day. How are we spending it? Right. And I mean, granted, there is a level of privilege that some people have that maybe others don't. So maybe they have a housekeeper, so they don't have to spend the hour and a half cleaning their house a day or whatever, you know. But basically the whole concept of that is, yeah, doing a time audit, seeing where you're spending your time, because it's so easy to think, oh, I'm just going to jump on Instagram for 15 minutes, check on my family. And then you look at the clock and an hour later, you're like, oh crap, I'm still scrolling on Instagram.
I'm still scrolling.
What did I just do? Right. And I think especially for teenagers, this is an issue, right? They think, oh, I'll just jump on or I'll just do this. But then they get their screen report at the end of the week and it's like, wow, I spent 45 hours on social media.
Right.
And it's like,
Right.
okay, what else could you have done in those 45 hours? Especially if you have goals and dreams that you want to be working toward.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're right. It boils down to, we can all fill our day with something, right? But what are we filling our time with? What's helping us become the best version of ourselves?
Mm-hmm.
And I get that there's times in your life where maybe you'll need to just numb out and have a minute of, hey, I just need a break. I'm just going to watch this movie, or I'm just going to binge an episode or two of my favorite. Like, I get that. Like, there's moments when that happens. But if that is your normal, then that's where it becomes crucial to audit your time and see, okay, what can I do better? How can I have the energy to show up for the important things? Like, I have this project coming up at school. How am I putting my time in to make sure I'm achieving that?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the power of the time audit, because like you said, looking back, you can be like, wow, that felt like such a long week, but what did I accomplish in that week?
Right.
Did I just feel overwhelmed the whole time and I didn't actually make steps toward whatever I'm working on? And so and even if you do it daily, it doesn't even have to just be like a weekly thing. And if daily feels too overwhelming, then yeah, start with a weekly time audit. But even at the end of the day, if you're just asking yourself, okay, how did I do today? What did I put my energy and my time toward? Okay, was that the best use of my time? No. Then what am I going to do different tomorrow? And kind of just doing that mental check-in with yourself. Yeah. Because it's so true. We all have things. We're all busy. Like, we live in a society where busy is touted as like a badge of honor. Like, oh, you're so busy, you must be accomplishing so much. But like you mentioned, if the busy is just busy for busy's sake, and you're not working on something, then you're just busy.
Right. I think what you said, just about the downtime too, that's important. I
Yeah.
think it's so important to have balance. So it's not about that. It's about being intentional with your
Yes,
time.
exactly.
So giving yourself that downtime is huge, but
Hmm.
be intentional about it. And when you are giving yourself that downtime, be fully engaged in
Hmm.
that downtime.
Yeah.
It's not helpful if your brain is still thinking about all the things you have to do, because then you're not fully
Mhm.
engaged in that downtime.
Yeah.
So
And you're not feeling
definitely.
refreshed or rejuvenated.
Right.
It all comes down to self-care, you
Right.
know. I think for so long this thing of self-care is seen as like, oh well, you're being selfish. Like especially if you're like a mom in society, like how dare you take time for yourself? Your sole purpose is to, live for your kids and to be there for your kids. But you're not going to show up as your best version if you're not taking care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part that's kind of overlooked. And it's the same for students. Like you're not going to show up as your best academic self if you're so burnt out and you're not taking time to rejuvenate it, like sleep, for instance, I feel like is an underrated thing right now. But
Mm.
really that's how your brain resets itself. Like sleep is crucial. Like I think we need to start looking at sleep as like it's as crucial to your body as water is. Like you cannot
I'm
function.
guilty of that.
Yeah,
Not
like
getting
and
enough sleep.
I've, there's been periods where I've had insomnia and then I'm like, holy crap, I can't even think straight today. And it's yeah, it's that same concept. That's when your mind rests,
Mm-hmm.
is when you're asleep. That's when you can get that mental break.
I think
Because
that's part of what you need to schedule in to your
yeah.
time. So one thing, I agree with you 100%, is you need to have that rest, rejuvenation, those mental breaks. On the flip side, that can't be all you do. You want to
Exactly.
actually achieve your goals and get things done. So I think, looking at it, why don't we break it down? Like, what is a time audit? Um, what we're talking about, all these things, would be step one: visualize your ideal day.
Hmm.
How do you see yourself spending your time? What's important to you? What are your priorities?
And how do you want to feel during your day? Do you
Mm,
want to feel overwhelmed? Do you want to feel rested? Like you're going to set yourself up to feel overwhelmed
mm-hmm,
if all you're doing is scheduling back to back to back to back to back meetings and not
mm-hmm,
giving yourself even like a 15-minute break in
right.
between those meetings, and that's what we're saying with this intentionality is spacing it out and pacing
Yeah,
yourself, you know.
right. Totally. And it doesn't have to be just geared toward work or school. Like maybe you
Yeah.
want to spend more quality time with your kids, or be more intentional about a relationship. Or for me, I play the bass. Maybe like I can't expect myself to be this bass extraordinaire and be a master on my instrument if I don't take time to practice.
Hmm.
So I should be better and more intentional about the time that I spend each day with practicing. And you're right, 24 hours a day doesn't seem like a lot, but look at the most influential people in the world: Mother Teresa, right, in history, Einstein,
Yeah.
Thomas Edison. I don't know. You could think of a million people,
Yeah.
but they had 24 hours and they just prioritized what was important to them and spent their time on those things. So if scrolling on social media is like the most important thing to you, then no, I guess by all means, like, maybe you're trying to be a social
Influencer.
media influencer, then yes, in that case, that's probably time well spent.
Yeah.
So you have to decide that there's no right or wrong answer. But the first step is definitely visualizing that and essentially setting like a goal. We talked about this in a previous episode:
Yeah.
setting goals on what your day is going to look like. And maybe put like a percentage next to it. Like I want to spend this percentage of my day doing X, this percentage of my day doing Y, and then Z, right? So you have a goal and an outline. Second step would be actually tracking yourself. So there's
Hmm.
tons of apps out there that I've seen, like time tracking apps. I guess you could use like a spreadsheet. You could
Hmm.
just write it down on paper.
Yeah.
There's like multi-stopwatch things. So like you can click start when you start certain things, like, okay, I'm in a meeting now, start. Like I've used that. But there are just tons of cool apps that you can use, and a lot of them are free.
Hmm.
And if you're one of those people who looks back at your day and you're like, what did I do? I don't even know. I
Mhm.
think an app is probably the easiest way to conduct a time audit for you.
Visually. Yeah.
Yep. The nice thing about it too is after you actually do the audit for over the, if like you're tracking everything you do over the course of a day, what I would say is then at the end of the week, then do an analysis of it. And if you're using an app, most of them will spit out a report. You mentioned like the screen time
Mhm.
tracker, which is
Yeah.
cool. That's
Yeah.
automatic. You don't even have to log that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just set it up on your phone and then your phone tells you over
Yeah.
this like
Every
time
Sunday.
range.
Yeah. Every
Yeah,
Sunday I get that notification.
you spent this many hours. So I think that's great. If you're using an app for time tracking, like look at it at the end of the week and
Yeah.
look at the breakdown of what you did. Like some apps will even show you what your productive hours are
Yeah.
throughout the
Yeah.
day. So it's super cool tools that are there to use.
Yeah.
Many are free. Find research, find which one works for you. If you don't use an app, one cool thing that I've heard many successful people use to analyze how they're spending their time is called the Eisenhower matrix. Have you ever heard that?
Sounds familiar, but I'm not
So
sure.
it's basically a grid, like four sections of the grid. And it's so it can either what you're doing can either fall into one of those four areas. Is the thing that you're doing not important or important? And then is that thing urgent or not urgent? So something can either be important and urgent. Those are things you should be doing immediately, right? So that's
Mhm.
great. Do it now. Something might be important and not urgent. So it needs to be done. It's important, but you can actually schedule a time to do it.
Mhm.
And then some things that you do are not important, but urgent. Delegate those things. So if you find, hey, I'm doing a ton of things throughout my day that are not important, but they're urgent, they still need to get done. Can you delegate that to somebody? Can you have your kids help you around the house? Can you have a coworker or an employee do that? Right. It depends on what your setting is. Some things are
Mhm.
just not important, but they need to get done. And then the last thing, which I think probably a lot of us find once we conduct a time audit, we'll probably find a lot of this, but not important and not urgent.
Yeah.
Delete,
Yeah, but
eliminate those.
those feel like the easier tasks, right? And so
Uh-huh.
sometimes those are maybe the ones we tackle first because we're like, oh, this is simple. I can get this done. And then not realizing the amount of effort and time that that's taking away from maybe, yeah, the more urgent
Right,
and important things.
right.
And something you said earlier too was like these apps that can point out your productivity hours. So maybe those are the hours that you're scheduling. Hey, I need to be creative, or I need to do this, or this is my school project that needs to be done. Those are the times when you should be scheduling the activities that you need to be productive on, right? And so it is a matter of just looking at your day. Some people function better like I do my best thinking in the morning or I do my best thinking in the afternoon. Okay, then identify that and make the most of your time
Mhm.
because you recognize when your energy, your productivity is up, and that's when you should be focusing on those important, urgent tasks that need to get done.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of the whole point of this is like analyzing how you operate because it looks different for everybody. Like we're not all morning people, we're not all night owls. Like we all have our different internal clocks. And so looking at our personal days and figuring out when we're going to be at our peak performance or when we might need to, hey, maybe this is when I take my break because by that time I'm just mentally tapped out and I
Mhm.
need, a break. And something else to kind of maybe help with productivity or keep you on track, like if you know that you're one that falls down the rabbit hole of social media, your phone, you can actually set limits. Like only let me look at Instagram for 20 minutes. And then at the end of that 20 minutes, okay, I'm done. I've hit my limit. Now I got to go focus on what I need to do, right? Because like you said, we're not saying, hey, don't take the moments of downtime for yourself. Like that's needed. You need breaks.
Mhm.
You need those, things. But if social media sucks your energy, then maybe avoid it or have that be the end of the day. That's when I'm going to just zone out and this is meaningless, mindless scrolling, right? But don't maybe do it in the middle of your day when, oh, that's going to make me sad or I'm going to compare myself to someone on social media because then it shifts your mindset throughout the day too. So it really is just being intentional with your time and your energy and how you're going to be the most effective throughout your day.
Mhm.
And it feels like a lot, right? As we're talking about it, it's like, holy cow, there's so much and how am I evaluating it? But really just break it down.
I think
throughout your
it sounds like it, but the actual tracking, like
yeah.
once you get into it, like at first it's going to be awkward and you're going to be like, oh, this is weird that I'm tracking everything I'm doing. Like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to walk my dog, or yeah, it's just
Yeah.
like, why track that? Like but I'm guilty of this because I love sitting in the morning with a cup of coffee, right? And just relaxing before starting my day. But sometimes that turns into a little bit longer period of time than what it maybe should be. But you don't realize that when you're in the moment, you're just enjoying it. And so that's an important part of my day. And I think it starts me off on the right foot. But knowing how much time am I actually spending, is 20 minutes turning into an hour and a half, but for example, like just be intentional. And I think it will be an eye-opening process for you guys. And maybe that's our little call to action to our listeners this week is try this.
Yeah.
Try a time audit, pick an app or pick a method and tell us about it, and just tell us about your journey. I would love to hear about it.
Yeah.
That would be so cool to just see what works for other people and what results did you find? Was it
Yeah.
eye-opening for you, or was it what you expected?
Yeah. Well, and to speak back to your point, like if you do need to take that hour and a half in the morning before you start your day, do it. But value your time and
Mhm.
say, I'm not going to schedule a meeting right after this. Or, my class, I'm not going to start till 10 a.m. or whatever. Like it's up to you. You choose how you want to spend your time. And so if you have this, we call it the BHAG, this big, hairy, audacious goal. Like if you have this BHAG that you're trying to achieve, like, okay, how can I get there? What do I need? How can I use my time to effectively achieve this goal or to achieve this project or whatever you may be working on at the time? It's very interesting. And like Sarah said, it might be, hey, you're surprised at where you're spending your time. Like you may not realize, oh my gosh, this is where I've been spending some of my time. Like
Right.
that's way more than I anticipated. You'll just learn something about yourself and your habits as you
Mm.
do this time audit. You'll be like, oh
Mhm.
wow, I thought that I was doing this, but in reality, this is where it was going. And then
Right.
and then you can start to identify, okay, so now I know where I need to cut time so that I can focus on the things that are going to move the needle in my life
Yeah.
and get me to a,
Maybe
better achievable state.
maybe that'll be your way to add more hours to your day. You're like, if
Yeah,
only I
exactly.
had, time is a non-renewable resource.
Yes.
Use every minute wisely.
Wisely. Yes. And yeah, like Sarah said, let us know how your time audit went. Share with us any insights that you've learned, and we'll chat next week. We'll be back.